Welcome to the chase. You know, we're all running this race. We're all trying to claim victory in it. In my job, I get to sit down with wealthy people all week long. I hear about their wins, I hear about their losses, and quite frankly, like a bartender, I hear about their heartache. And I don't want you to run that type of race, or at least I want you to succeed at the race that you're running, and I want you to succeed at something that matters. Think about it like this. All the while you're chasing after something that's good, God's chasing you with something great.
Well, hello, this is Chris McAlpin, your host for The Chase, our podcast that covers all things money, economics, markets, and we look at the world with a biblical lens. And the biggest reason for this podcast, I want to give you a little stat here from a number of studies I've seen. Did you know that 70% of Americans are worried about their financial future? That means that most likely you are. That's a crazy statistic when you think about it in light of 50% of Americans are in the top 10% wealth bracket in the entire world. So what is it that keeps us or gets us so worried and worked up? And what is it that gets us rolling with this anxiety and this anxiousness? We're going to talk a lot about that today. We're going to cover a topic in behavioral finance titled noise. And we're going to start unpacking all of these different aspects because, quite frankly, you think about the TV shows, the movies, all of our screen time. You just pick your genre of screen time, and how many half-truths go through our ears every day? You know, how many just out and out lies? Okay, how many things in this world can we look at the screens and go, "Oh my goodness, I've never seen that before. What does that mean to me in my life? And why would this affect me?" So get my old friend Joe McQuaid with Ascend Consulting. We're going to unpack these ideas of noise and how it pressures our life. And he's been on Wall Street, he's been around the financial industry. He has seen a lot of this pressure. And so that's why I'm getting him today. And we have to do it right now because he's leaving to go to Mount Everest. Bless his poor heart. I feel very sorry for him. Joe, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thanks for having me again.
Man, I appreciate you being on here. So what's the deal? Where are you going this time? So what is the route this time?
Yes, so I do leave on Thursday, nice and early in the morning. I will not get to Nepal till Sunday, so it's a heck of an adventure just getting there. But this time I'll be summiting or attempting to summit 3 different mountains in the Everest area, so in the Khumbu region, all of which are somewhere between 20 and 21,000 feet. So I'll be spending the entire month of April in the Khumbu region.
Wow, the entire month. That's cool, man. Are you excited? You ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
All right.
Excited and can't wait for Thursday.
I remember running with you the last time you were going, and man, no, my back's not gonna let me do that with you this time. Right. Man, I'm jealous. I am very jealous. But let's get on to the show, man. Let's talk about noise. And as we get started, what is noise? Where does this come from? Why that time?
Yeah, absolutely. And great place to start. I think the scientific definition of noise is it's the unwanted variability in judgment. But to put that into perspective, I think the best way to think about noise is think about a bullseye or a dartboard. You know, visualize that look, and the best answer to anything, to a financial situation, to a personal decision, to any kind of judgment, the right answer is the bullseye. And I don't like using the word right. The best answer is the bullseye. So if you think of it that way, and you have 5 or 6 different individuals making a decision or a judgment, and everybody is in the bullseye circle, that means there was very little variability and very little noise. But now let's think about the definition of noise. If you look at that bullseye and 5 people answer something or make a judgment, and they hit all over that bullseye. So all over that dartboard, one's to the right, one's to the left, one's in the center, one's in the bottom left, one's in the bottom right. If that's everyone's answer, that means there was a lot of noise and there was a lot of variability in the answers to those questions. And just to take it one step further, it's also a good way to visualize bias. So if center is the right judgment or is the proper or best answer, if everyone is all centered to the right of that board, so everybody answers in the upper right hand corner, that would be considered bias. So that's the best way that I try to explain what is noise.
What, so we get these inconsistencies in judgment, and I think that as we come up with some examples through the conversation, that people will start seeing some examples in their life. But what causes noise?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of causes, and I think some of them are internal and just within ourselves, and then some of them are external and caused by our environment or society or business. Let's start with kind of the internal causes, and I think one that we commonly fall victim of is just quick decisions. So, we've mentioned in our prior podcast kind of the system 1 and system 2. System 1 being our ability to make quick responses on the run for simple items. Most of us don't think of, getting up out of a chair or taking a couple of steps. Us lucky folks that don't have to think about that, we can, that's all system 1 decisions, taking a sip of water. And sometimes, though, we have complex judgments or challenges in our life. And if you're too quick to make a decision, that could lead you down the wrong path. Also
kind of the fear, kind of the flight or fight mentality.
Either that, yep, correct. Either that or intuition.
Okay. Yes. I mean, I see that so much. We see that so much with people's finances because money is tied to our survival. That a lot of times we get this survivalist instinct with the slightest bit of stress. We go into this fight or flight mentality. Causes terrible decisions because typically when it comes to money and finance, you have the time to make a system 2 decision, which is that thoughtful, planned, deliberate set of actions that you should carry out. So what about the external? I think, where does this come from?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of external factors as well that could lead into this. I think the first one, if we want to kind of stick with that bullseye example in the beginning, it's not knowing what the answer is. So if we don't know what our goal is, or we don't know where we're going, therefore we don't know the answer. So then it's very hard to decide what is causing the noise in our decision making or our judgment process. So that's a big one, is kind of not knowing where we're going. I think another one is time. You get more noise if the time frame is longer. So that's another external factor that plays into this. Too much data. That's another one. We have a lot of data out there.
I wish I could find the study. Maybe you know where it is. And I can remember years ago reading this, but somebody did a study in the 90s compared to today and how people's investment returns were better because they at most got quarterly statements, but in some cases only got an annual statement. So you invested your money, it stayed invested, and you rode out the ups and the downs that because of these things, we have so many people that can get their fingers on any stock price, any bond price, any ETF, but we don't know what to do with it. How do you solve that? Let's take that little tangent. So how do you solve all the data coming in from the outside sources in the world? Let's just talk just markets. How do you watch that and kind of filter through it yourself?
Yeah, and I think that comes down to that plan. How are you going to approach reviewing the data that's out there and available for free? Even one step further, Chris, which you just talked about, that, and I've said that a number of times on other interviews and events, that I think one of the worst things that ever happened to stock market performance for clients, or really behavioral finance, is being able to view your account on a daily basis. So how do you take in this data, and how do you interpret it? And do you have a framework that you use? So I don't think it's not a negative that we have all this data available to us, and performance statistics and all sorts of research for free, which again 5 to 10 years ago cost thousands and thousands of dollars, and now it's nothing.
Zero. Yes.
It's really having the sources that you trust, and kind of following the same sources.
Right. I think of just in the markets alone. I've got my screen and what I'm watching. It's a good day while we're recording this. Look at all that green thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, to the listeners, Joe and I are laughing that off. We've seen plenty of good days and bad days in our career.
Absolutely.
But if I have about 5 to 10 positions, they all mean something to me. I mean, I've got the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ because people are going to ask what the markets did today. But other than that, everything on the screen has something to do with our models. And it has something to do with one model that tells me what everything else is doing in our house today. If it's not in our house, I don't care. I don't, especially when I'm looking at the markets. So we've got to have a system to mentally filter through. And if you don't have it, don't watch it. I think I've seen it drive more people crazy, watching markets without a system to filter the data through. You remember Danny Matthews, one of our founding partners, and when he retired, he didn't, I'm still not sure he watches the markets. He did it for a career. There's no reason to now. Not mildly curious. You can't turn them off. But what are some of the decisions? I asked about the markets. Okay. What are some of the decisions? We think of some of the professions that are most susceptible to noise.
Yeah, great question, Chris. And I think it's the common things that impact our lives on a daily basis. So we've already talked about this a little bit, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. Financial decisions, for sure. Medical decisions are another one that could be quite noisy. And recently I've gone through that in my family, getting a lot of different opinions and judgments on the medical side. Legal or courts, judgments, that's very noisy. And then a lot of personal decisions. A lot of decisions on your personal life, your goals, maybe career. A lot of that can tend to be quite noisy as well.
Absolutely. I mean, think about some of your earliest jobs. You got a job based on what was available or what your family or probably parents pressured you into. Nothing more, nothing less, no more insight than that. I mean, most of us, there's few people that I know, and those few people who went through school saying, this is what I want to do with my life. That's what they do with their life. Tend to be fairly pleased with.
Yes.
So, I think of a lot of different examples based on what you just said. When I go into the prisons as a volunteer chaplain, and I've seen a lot of the discrepancies of sentences based on a lot of the same crimes over the years. And that's it's a very dark topic. You and I've read the book by Kahneman and his team, and that was one of the studies that they did in the book's titled Noise, where they showed the range of differences from judges sentencing criminals from 3 months to 3 years to 10 or 15 years, all for the same crime. Now, so you've got some, but you and I were discussing this. One of the fun examples, this is not a fun example, is maybe some of our listeners in the Deep South, it might be as dark when we think of the New Orleans Saints playing the Rams 2019 NFC Championship game, and the worst no call maybe in the history of the NFL, just a blatant pass interference call. And what's the official doing? I mean, is he looking at the stands? Is he looking at the game? Is he looking at the play? It's a minute 49 left. He's tired. He's been running up and down, keeping up with all these professional athletes. Does that fall in the category of noise? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it. I think it does. I think it does because of even some of the examples that we have given so far in this discussion. Number one, it could have been too quick of a judgment. So instead of maybe getting the group together and seeing what all of the umpires and referees on the field thought about the call before you made the call, as you know, in the NFL, some calls can be reviewed and some cannot be. So in cases like that, it might benefit the judgment of multiple people and taking the aggregate decision. I think the second thing is the biological factors. So, it was at the end of the game, you're tired, there's a lot of pressure on you. So there's a lot of stress on that official. And all of that plays into the idea of noise that surrounds some of those decisions and quick decisions in that case.
And in that case, the Rams went to the Super Bowl and Saints did not. I mean,
Correct.
It's a big decision. And he had to make it with that system one judgment. He had to make a fast call. Although you kind of see the replay, it was pretty clear. I'm not really sure. I wonder if it was one of those that's so obvious that he forgot to throw the flag. I don't know. Maybe we should interview him. We'll get him on the show. We'll interview that official and see what he has to say about
yeah.
I doubt they'll get us on there.
Yeah.
So, we think about it so in this topic, let's take this to financial. We talked about the markets.
Yep.
Let's start to unpack, how does noise affect our financial decisions? And even more so, we can dive into what we can do about it next. So how does noise affect our financial decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be great if this was being recorded live and we could do a live poll with some of the viewers, because I think there's a really good real life example of how this impacts our financial lives right now. So the yield curve just inverted. And since 1950, every single time except one time that has led to recession. You could argue the one time it didn't lead to recession was because of Fed intervention. But one time that didn't lead to recession. But I would love to poll folks out there and say, do you think we're going into a recession? And so I bring that up because you have a piece of data that has a very high level of accuracy out there. But I have a funny feeling we would get at best 50-50. I would almost think that we would get more people leaning towards we are not heading into recession. Now, I don't know if we're heading into recession. I am not making a forecast in any way. All I'm saying is that's how noise impacts our decisions.
Does it also affect just the time frame? How impatient we are? I was listening to Bloomberg the other day and the news show, and there's they had one of their experts on it. He said, yes, the yield curve, the inversion of the yield curve is highly predictive of a recession. However, they can be as far as 12 to 18 months out.
Yeah.
Is that a part of the noise? We have so much noise that we have to filter so often that it's shortened our attention spans and it's shortened our memory that we get a yield curve inversion in next March. We get a recession, and who's going to go, oh yeah, the yield curve inverted last year. It predicted this.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, I think time is also impacts the what happens with, or how much noise impacts our judgment. So the longer out it is, the more time you have to go out and read all this data and to read all these opinions and to listen to the factors. And I think what at the end of the day, why this is such an important subject is it leads itself to planning. So by no means, I wouldn't say if I saw that indicator and I was making financial advice. And there's a lot of other factors that go into building a portfolio than the yield curve. But possibly that would be one of the areas in my framework where I would start getting more defensive. And that plays into, Chris, what you just said about, it could be 12 to 18 months down the road.
Yeah. Well, there's so much noise that factors in over that time. I remember this 12 years ago, even 13 years ago. So it's 2009, and we're coming out of the recession. We have a lot of politically conservative clients in our area, and so we're having a lot of these conversations, and they want to be conservative investment wise because they didn't care for who was in the White House at the time. They didn't care for the direction of the country, and I remember a lot of conversations about this. I've had it in 2016 when the roles were reversed. Had it in 2020 when it reversed back. And the conversation of, and I always encourage them that, first off, I completely understand. I look at the world with you, and the world's going to hell in a handbasket, no doubt about it. The world's been going to hell in a handbasket for quite a while. Again, we have a lot of access to a lot of news that a generation ago we didn't have. 2 generations ago was science fiction. And so now we're having to filter all this political noise, all of this world going to hell in a handbasket noise, all of this bad news, and then go look at something financially. And most of the time, the two have nothing to do with each other. But because I'm afraid of the direction of the world, I want to be conservative in my investments. And it leads a lot of us to make mistakes in doing that.
Yes.
How do you combat that?
Yeah, I think a couple of ideas there. Take complex judgments like financial planning, which is extremely complex, and break it down into smaller parts. So instead of, I never quite understood in our industry how we sit down maybe as early as mid-20s or late 20s, and we're starting to plan for retirement. And again, I'm not advocating that you don't plan for retirement, but I feel like there's a lot of things between that day and retirement that we should be thinking about. And so instead of thinking of this as what am I going to do in 50 or 60 years? And what are my assets going to be? What are my income needs, et cetera, et cetera? Maybe we break it down into smaller parts. And that's just using financial planning as an example, but you could think of anything. If you're going to go on vacation in 6 months, break it down into smaller parts. If you want to do an addition on your house, break it down into smaller parts. It seems to be a lot easier to break things down into smaller tasks. I think resisting premature intuitions. I know some folks view intuition as a sixth sense, but its studies show that typically it doesn't lead us in the right direction. And some people
say this about gut instinct, that your gut instinct may be right, but it's undisciplined.
Yes, that's a great way.
Your intuition can be right, or it gets you in the right area, but you got to remember that gut instinct, intuition, that's God's design for us in stressful situations, fight or flight. We need to make a decision right now. But in financial planning, how many times do you have to make a decision right now?
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. So, but you talk about systems, you talk about framework. I know you talk about rules-based investing. Where does this start to come into play with noise?
Yeah, and rules-based investing, or just rules in general. Again, we're kind of leaning towards investments because that's the topic of our discussion. But I think you can really put that into your process for anything you do in life. So, if following rules, well, I guess we started with a framework. Is we're trying to look at on an overall arching process. What type of data are we using? What are we looking at? Again, we talked about before that maybe having multiple sources and aggregating that data is a really good approach in building out your framework. And then the reason for the rules and setting rules in motion is it eliminates as much of the behavior and the emotions that you possibly can. Again, that goes back to looking at your account on a daily basis. If we even could discipline ourselves to only look quarterly, which I know is probably impossible, but if we could, that would again make it more rules based. Building your plan and your investments.
Set up your own nudges. I mean, we're talking about books and titles. You can set your own nudges up and
Yep.
do things to keep you from checking. I think that's where discipline, and I've called that financial planning by lying to myself sometimes.
Yeah.
I taught myself to become a saver by automatically taking the money out and putting it over in a savings account and literally not ever looking at that account statement and just pretending the money's not there. Go financial planning by lying to yourself. Okay, it works. These little small nudges in the right direction. What do y'all do? We'll start to wrap up with this, but what do y'all do when climbing the areas around Everest? You're summiting a peak. You've got all kinds of systems. You've got rope systems, and you've got harness systems, and you've got your body as a system, and you have your gear, and you have food systems, you have water supply. How do you manage all of that?
Yeah, that's a great analogy too, and that's one of the things that I love about mountaineering and going on these adventures is that everything is in essence rules based, and there's no not following the rules. If you have fixed lines. When you're about to summit a peak at 21,000 feet, you do not go off those fixed lines. And typically, even if you look through the history of mountaineering, most of the unfortunate situations, some of them are caused by natural disasters, but the majority of them are caused by going away from that procedure and that process. And so it's camping somewhere where you're not really supposed to camp because of avalanche risk, or not following fixed lines because you got impatient and you wanted to get in front of the group that was maybe going a little slower than you hoped, even down to the food. So each one of these procedures have been set in place for years. Now they improve and they find what works and what doesn't. But breaking them is a life or death situation in these scenarios.
And that I think is we forget in many places in the world that is true. I think a lot of times in America, we've grown up very comfortably middle class and up. We've got enough. And so we get cute when we're young. We get away with it when we're young, and we think it continues as throughout the rest of our life. And that's, you get cute one too many times, and you lose money, you go bankrupt. There's a lot of bad negatives to it. And what you're talking about in mountaineering, you can get cute once and die, right? Yes. Yeah. Man, have an awesome trip. That is going to be so cool. What a weird way to end that. You get on to die. No, you're going to see awesome God-created vistas that you can only see from these summits around Everest. I'm jealous. I'm really jealous, actually. So I hope you have an awesome trip, my friend. Take care. All right. Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Listen, I hope that as we've done these different shows on behavioral finance, it starts to seep in and click with you in ways that it changes how you think. There's so much in life. I've got teenagers at home. I watch the world many times through their eyes. I see how the devices just push noise into their life. And I was having this conversation the other day, and I thought about myself. I said, I look at my phone just as much as they do. I just look at things like the Wall Street Journal and email and text for business, and the markets app, because there's some market going on 24/7. Why does that affect me any less than them pulling up their phones to text a friend or FaceTime a friend or to post something on Insta or to play a game? We look at other generations and we can judge them very well, but we won't look at ourselves and judge ourselves the same. And I think that in in the world of business, in the world of finances, and especially personal finances, our life noise affects us tremendously from how our parents raised us. And we could be 65 years old and that still affects us. How we grew up. Did we have money? Did we not have money? What kind of job did we have? What kind of career did we have? Blue collar, white collar, gray collar. And we fit into these identities and these roles. This is why I like to look at what the Bible says about money and finance and just life in general, because God's word constantly points out the truth for life. And it's constantly giving us a lens of truth to look at life with. 1 John 4:1 says this, "Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many prophets have gone out into the world." And now when we read a verse like that, we start going, well, Chris, Fox News is not a spirit, man. I'm not really sure. Or CNN, excuse me, I don't want to step on any of my Fox News friends, or MSNBC, we'll just get everybody on this, ESPN, okay, whatever show that you're streaming. And the list can go on and on and on. I am as susceptible to this as anyone else. But this noise in the world, it's very much like the Apostle John is writing to say, test this noise, test these spirits and see if they are from God. And so here's a couple of rules that you can use, all right? Test everything that you see in here, okay? Think about it. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Okay. Now, if you're learning something that's true, that's helpful, that's inspiring, and that's necessary, it may not be very kind. Okay. But we can look at it and go, is it godly? Is this something that I need to know? And does it affect my life? And how does it affect my life? I think we get this idea because in years gone past, we read the newspaper on a daily basis because we needed to know what's going on in the world. Well, now we have 24-hour news channels and we get inundated, and we still live by this decades-old rule of I need to know everything that's going on in this world. So I'm going to watch the 24-hour news cycle 25 hours a day. And all of a sudden, we have no filter to push out the noise that we don't need. So think about what you're hearing. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Number two, how do the outside effects affect you? How is something that's coming in from outside of your life or some internal thought process shaping your life to the negative, shaping your finances to the negative? We're talking about finances, but I will talk about life as well. How is it shaping you towards the negative as opposed to towards the positive? This is why the Bible gives us a lens to look at the world, that the fruit of the Spirit is love, peace, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Self-control, that discipline. Okay, so it's good that's coming from God as opposed to all this negative noise coming from the world. And I'm in no way saying go be Pollyannic about everything and stick your head in the sand and act as if nothing's going on. That's foolishness. I'm not saying that at all. So we look at the world, we just look at the world through a lens of truth. And I would say number three, think, plan, pray, and act. Okay, that as you look at the world and you think about how it affects you, are you staying on your plans? Are your plans good? Are they headed to the right direction? Pray, ask God, just ask him that question. God, is this plan good for me? Am I thinking about this accurately? Guide my thoughts so that you get good steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then go act. Your financial plan, now let's take it back to that for a second. That financial plan is just a tool for you to manage the other tools and resources and opportunities in your life. Okay, you don't live and die with it. You don't go up and down with it. Your identity's not in it. It is simply a tool, and I want you to use it very well because we want you to succeed. We want you to plan and take action with excellence. But remember this, all while you're chasing good, God is chasing you with something great. Take care. God bless.
For disclosure and citation information, please go to www.soundfsg.com/disclosures.